Hey Vinny, Malchus Outdoors. I'm man. I've just been sick. I'm sick all the time where I'm at. I don't know what it is, but anyway. So they came out with the Bassmaster Open 2023 schedule, which they've also changed the format. I don't know if I've talked about that before, but let's just go into it just a little bit here. I'm not going to complain like usually we do. Complain, hey, they never go out west. I think I brought that up last time with the Elite Series, and we're kind of at the point where we're just content with the Toyota Series and the trails that are growing out there, the wild, or the WWBT, or the Apex Trail, the One Bass and stuff. That's good enough at this point. Like, I'm not even, current state of the world, let's not even talk about it anymore as I complain. But I did talk about going to the same lakes over and over again for the Elite Series, where these lakes and these rivers or these fisheries that are just constantly beat up. And, excuse me, and they were really good fisheries, they still are, but they're just getting beat to hell. And some of them there is a degradation in the fishery over this. I mean, it can be argued how much of an impact that tournaments have, but I can give you anecdotal evidence that I've seen through like lakes like Grand or whatnot, where you have either you start displacing fish into certain areas. Like, Grand is a perfect example. There's release areas that people target constantly, and if you know where they're at, there's always a huge there's always a population of fish there, just because this year was a little bit less in the amount of pressure for that lake, but years past there's just so many tournaments, and the Game and Fish, or whoever, Oklahoma out Division of Wildlife, or whoever's doing it there, you can see the trucks that are taking the fish, and they're distributing them in certain locations. But those locations, if they're known, there's a huge amount of anglers there that are fishing in any other given tournament. And then it was Wolf Creek for a while, and there's still a population of fish there, obviously. I mean, there will be, but I mean, they were just releasing fish around there, and there's just a huge population of fish. You could place very well in a tournament by fishing Wolf Creek there. And that goes, when I was young, I did that myself, like when I was younger. When I think the first tournament I won had something to do with that. It was in Arizona, and ran up this lake and caught a limit, and then we came back down and fished right around where the first big piece of real, structure there was outside of a release area. Not that there was a whole lot of tournaments there, but it's just like one of those areas that people, there was a prevalence of folks that would view in tournaments as you got to run places. There was this view, like back in the day, like staying near the ramp or whatnot was not necessarily a good thing. It was like you had to make that run. You had to go to these areas where there's less fish, and then being around the ramp, there was just like this misconception there wasn't that many fish there. But now that, over the last probably decade, that's gone away, and people realize that, these release areas, these fish, yeah, they'll disperse over time, but for a great deal of time, or for perpetuity, there'll be fish that just take up residence there. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. But just to say that some of these lakes get beat up, and what I've noticed, and we're going to go into this schedule here, is there's some really good things about it, and actually I would say predominantly this is a pretty good open schedule. Now the new format of that schedule is debatable, and I know a lot of guys are going to say, well, this is what it takes to be on the tour. But then what is the essence of the Opens, and what are they there for? Are they there for the average guy to have a chance, or are they there to weed out the people that have money? And because essentially what we're doing here is there's like a couple circuits within this now. And one is the new format of how you qualify for the Elite Series, and the other is, classic qualifications. So it's going to be interesting, but let's go ahead and we'll just get into that, and then we'll get into that formatting issue. Because to me, that's been knocking around in my head a little bit about how that's going to work out for the average guy, or if not, or the state of the sport for the average guy. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit the format first. Let's get into the format, and then we'll get into the schedule. Schedule's pretty. I'm pretty happy with it. But okay, so the new format. If you're not familiar with the old one, where they had like you qualify through each. There's a number of spots through each division to go to the Elite Series, and then they had an overall Angler of the Year, and there's a few slots there. They've just changed that, and they put basically all the qualifying positions come from fishing all of the opens. Now this in there, I guess there's some classic qualifications through the divisions, so you can still qualify for the classic if you're just an average Joe fishing these things. At least that's to my knowledge. That's what I read of it. I might be wrong. If I am wrong, correct me in the comments. Anyway, so here's a way I've kind of tussled with this in my mind because I knew this was coming. There's been people talking about it, but here's the thing. So it's good. Let's go with the pros on this. It's good that because it is going to prepare you for Elite Series area events. Being on a tournament trail that, well, I guess it's still predominantly it's in the East or whatever. But money wise, if you can survive doing these 9 tournaments and placing the top whatever 9, doing these 9 tournaments and placing in the top 9, you should be able to go into the Elite Series unless you just shot your wad completely doing this and hoping for sponsors. Now, that could possibly be so, but for the most part, it is a good way of getting you introduced into that. Now, on the flip side of things, this is supposed to be like a minor league thing. This is where we find the talent. This is where we find the next big name, give the opportunity for somebody that can't travel around the country to dip his foot and possibly make that next step up. So in the current state of things where you have close to $5 diesel about everywhere, where gas is so high, where the price of food is so high, where just housing or rentals and stuff is so high, this is going to eliminate a lot of people. So the average guy is just not going to be able to have a chance at qualifying for the elites until he's got a nest egg set aside, which is hard enough. So do I see participation increasing in the opens? I don't think so. We got to look at it this way. They might fill all the spots, but you look at how oversubscribed they were. There's always a waiting list the last few years. I think that's going away. And the reason is because of this qualifying format. I mean, yeah, you can go fish for a classic spot, like one tournament, I believe it's win and you're in, but like that's one out of whatever 160 boats or whatever it is. Other than that, you're not going to make any money unless you're in the top 5 in any of these events. So you take the travel, you take the fact that there's really no real great incentive anymore to fish just one division if that's what you can afford, because they're still whatever they $1,600, $1,800, whatever entry fee. So you just couple all those costs together. You couple the travel expenses and you couple the risk reward of fishing these. It's just not going to add up for a lot of guys. So you might you've eliminated to me a lot of possible talent. Or you guys have been so oversubscribed there that now you'll still fill those slots, but you just don't have as much on the waiting list. Okay, so on the flip side of that, what you're going to see too on these qualifying events is you're going to see those bigger names that are already established in the sport. They are going to be the guys that can afford the 9 tournaments across. They're going to be traveling more than the Elite Series, to be totally honest, if it looks like. So you're going to see those guys do well because they already have the sponsorship base. They already have these things. So if you're like a guy in the BBT and all of a sudden you want to go back to Bass, excuse me, or on the pro circuit, which is now the invitationals, and you want to go to the Bass, it's going to be easier for you to do that. Or if you're in Bass and you might not qualify for whatever, you're in the Elite Series, it's going to be, those are the guys you're going to see up there, the big names that are already there. You're not going to see too many little guys unless they're independently wealthy, unless they have that backing already. So a lot of talent's going to be overlooked. Let's just put that. New talent, fresh talent. And that's what this should be about, is finding that fresh pool of talent, which I think where the invitation, or the MLF has that right now because they're keeping that model, and they're displayed across the country, where bass is starting to niche itself exclusively to people that are already established in the sport. So I don't think this is necessary. I don't think this is a bad thing in a couple of senses of the word, but I don't think it's a positive thing for the average guy that might want to pursue a career, or a young kid that, he's good, he's doing well, and he wants to take that next step and qualify. Well, last year he could stick around, reasonable amount around his region and have a chance at going and up against the big dogs and proving himself that way. Now he can't. There's just no way unless he has mommy and dad, daddy doing, paying for a lot of things. Most of those guys are now going to be like myself. I'm like the whole travel thing. I was like, well, I'll just stick to regional stuff if I, have to. It just doesn't make any sense. So when you take the cost of everything, you're pretty much going to go in the hole about 40, 50 grand right off the bat, just fishing these 9. It doesn't make any sense. So, from that perspective, it's not that you don't have the passion to do it. It's like, well, let me go, essentially go into debt completely with the off chance that I might, or you're pretty much, that I might qualify. I mean, completely. I say going into debt completely. I mean, going into like a life spiraling debt bubble of your own creation here to try to do that. And maybe you will, but there's 9 guys. And if you do it this year, then are you going to be able to do it the next year? So it's like a one-off thing. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that. Now let's go into the schedule real quick. So, like I said, it's not that bad. Because I'm looking at some of these lakes. I'm not going to go through each division because I'm already like going over the time that I wanted to do this. But I'm just going to go down the lakes and maybe some of the dates. Now here's the thing. So when I'm looking at the schedule right off the bat, I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna name a couple of lakes that I complained about in like the Elite Series, like the tournaments keep hitting. That is just, we're over it already. So let's go. I guess I'll go through the division. So Division 1, because they changed the names. They're not like East or Central region. They're divisions now. So Division 1, you got Lake Eufaula, Alabama. I mean, they've had their fair share of tournaments, but you haven't seen much of that lake in the last couple of years. Maybe, I mean, MPFL went there. But not a bad lake. It's in March. Wheeler Lake, instead of going to Pickwick constantly, I guess Wheeler, that's okay. So like I'm saying, like, they're not unknown lakes. They go there a lot, but all right, that's not bad. They're still 2. I guess it's in Division 1, so they're both in Alabama. Then you run down the floor to the Harris Chain, which I just talked about. I don't know how many times they were just that lakes. Those chain of lakes have been beat like redhead stepchildren. That's like the Grand Lake of Florida. I feel like it gets beat. But here we go. So when you get through Division 1, which seems to be, like I said, I guess Wheeler and Lake Eufaula, not quite as bad, but they do get hit a lot. Harris Chain gets beat up like a redhead stepchild. It's just constantly. Okay, Division 2, Toledo Bend. Hey, we haven't seen that in a while. That's not bad. Then here we go. This is, okay, so Division 2, Lake Eufaula. Oklahoma, not Alabama. Lake Eufaula, hey, I don't remember the last time I seen. I mean, I'm sure I know they've been to Toledo Bend, but this is not bad. I mean, I haven't seen that in a while. You're hitting Louisiana, which is arguably Toledo Bend, Texas, too. Big fish. I mean, that's going to be cool. Large body of water. Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, something obscure. Not a lot of, I mean, yeah, guys fish that a lot, but I mean, not a lot of the tournament scene. If you're like me, I try to think of a Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma tournament. I know they've happened, but I just don't recall in the last number of years. Lake of the Ozarks, nobody's been there in a while. I've been saying it, like, hey, why don't you go to the Ozarks and do something like that? Because there's a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of good lakes there, a lot of big lakes that you can get away from people. It's like, all right, that's not bad. And that's in the fall. That's be this time next year on Lake of the Ozarks. So top water galore. That should be good. You should see a lot of good 4 or 5 pounders coming out of there. So those are cool. And then that Eufaula is a summer tournament, mid-June, and you go to Toledo Bend in the spring. That should be good. Okay, so we go to the last division, Division 3, Bugs Island. Like, when's the last time I think Bugs Island, it's been a while, but that's like a historic fishery that we haven't seen too much of play. So that's kind of cool. That's not a bad lake. I wish the Elite Series had this kind of diversity, or where they're going to places that haven't been beat up, by every major circuit in the last few years. Okay, then here we go to the one that's been beat up, that is pressuring all these smallmouth, that probably is killing a lot of them, to be totally honest. I mean, I just suspect from some of the some of the anecdotal evidence or people that are putting out stories on some of these lakes, especially in the Great Lakes, about fish care. But St. Lawrence, arguably, yes, it's one of the best smallmouth fisheries in the world, but it's just beat up constantly by tournaments now. It's like and this is July, so I guarantee there's probably going to be more circuits. There's going to be more tournaments at St. Lawrence. It's going to be incredible, just the amount of tournaments are going to be held on. Okay, so I've already ranted on that aspect of this. So they're going to one that's constantly having tournaments again. I'd call that the Grand Lake of the North, possibly, at this point. But anyway, so you go September, Watts Bar. So like I said, this isn't bad. I mean, it's not Pickwick where everybody else goes all the time. So Watts Bar, not okay, cool. That's a little bit, different. But once again, you look at these three divisions, and as far as you go west is you follow Oklahoma. Everything else is, I would say, the most diverse fishery, or the most diverse division. Like, so this is why I was like, wish that they'd, the one aspect of keeping the qualifications the same as like Division 2. A guy could do that and still argue that he's just qualified as anybody else because of the diverse nature of going to Toledo Bend, Lake Eufaula, and then going to an Ozark Lake. But the rest of these, okay, Virginia, Tennessee, and New York, okay, that's a semi, a little bit more diverse. But then that first one, Alabama, Florida, I mean, I'm just arguing that we're staying in the same region, which I understand the economics of it, and I'm not going to complain about being out west. But anyway, so overall, schedule's pretty good. I'll give it, it's one of the better schedules, or it's better than the Elite Series schedules. That's my opinion. Now, the qualification thing, that's still I'm still beating around that in my head. I think I like the fact that it was supposed to be the Open's supposed to be a minor league thing. It's supposed to allow the ability for the average guy that maybe doesn't have that kind of budget at the time to qualify and get to that next level, have that opportunity. But now we've made it more of an elite thing. Like you're isolating people now at this point. Like the average guy, there's just no way. The average guy that makes whatever X amount of dollars, I don't care who he is now, like you better be making over 100K somewhere else to be able to do this and have the time. Like this is not good. I guess you can fish the divisions, maybe qualify for a classic. That's cool too. I mean, if it was me, if I'm going to do that, I would probably just save my money and go through the the Bass Federation stuff, fish local stuff, work your way up, do the team series things if they're still doing all that. It just makes more economical sense. And anyway, that's my rant on that. Like I said, I'm more of a fan. These guys are pushing me more towards MLF stuff. Me personally. Anyway, I'll chat with you later. Peace.